weekend, and everybody came. 400,000 of them. They stayed for the weekend, even over into Monday. But the party never came off. For the first time in 71 years, the scheduled race day was totally canceled. Not an engine turned over at Indy. Still, most of the faithful remained. But Monday was worse than Sunday, as this scene indicates. So we all stood around in the rain some more until the Speedway announced that it was off again. Come on back on Saturday, they said, and we'll try again. So, here we are. For the first time ever, ABC Sports has been prepared to cover the 500 on live network television since last weekend, weather permitting, and as of now, it appears that weather will at last permit. How many have returned? Well, it has to be a guess. There's no official attendance figures here, but perhaps 250,000 should be a pretty good estimate. There are individual seats for more than that number, and as you can see, most of them seem to be occupied. And then there's the infield. It's been suitable only for mud wrestling most of the week, but the cleanup crews have done heroic work, and the area is passable today. Infield people are a hardy crowd anyway, and it takes more than a little mud to scare them off. Some of them actually like mud, as we saw last week. But mud or no mud, this is still the world's most famous automobile race, and the pre-race excitement today is no less than it was last Sunday. They've already seen marching bands and pretty girls this morning, and yet to come is back home again in Indiana, and the age-old cry, "Gentlemen, start your engines." But it's a story that began 3 weeks ago today with the battle for the pole on the first day of qualifying. The endless quest of Mario Andretti at age 46 got things rolling on the first qualifying day. The Italian-born former World Grand Prix champion, winner at Indy just once 17 years ago, set the pace and briefly sat on the pole with this run. Then came Danny Sullivan, the handsome, rakish defending champion. The Flying Bachelor posted a speed of 215.382 miles per hour, an all-time speed record for Indy, and people wondered again, how fast can they go? As they've wondered since Ray Haroon won the first 500 at about 70 miles an hour. But Danny couldn't relax. Yet to come was his teammate, Rick Mayers.
I think he's still going to be the man to do it for 4 laps, and if I got to get beat by somebody, I couldn't have a better guy to do it, but I'd like to stay on the pole.
Sure enough, Mears snatched the pole position from Sullivan with yet another record, 216.828 miles per hour. Mears already has 2 wins here, in 1979 and 1984, but now he's on the comeback trail after an accident a year and a half ago that almost ended his career and has left him still with pain, considerable pain in his feet and legs. Rick Mears on the pole. But right now, live, Rick Mears still back in the garage area, standing with his rival and teammate, the defending champion, Danny Sullivan. Mears going after his 3rd Indy win. Rounding out the first row will be a young Charger, son of a former champion, Michael Andretti. There are 2 fathers and sons in this race today, the Al Unsers and Mario and Michael Andretti. This was Michael on the first qualifying day as he bumped his dad from the front row and took his position alongside Mears and Sullivan. It was a symbol of the changing of the guard at the Speedway. One way or another, the spotlight always finds A.J. Foyt at Indy. He was about to go out when inspection showed his car's measurements were 25 1/1000th of an inch in excess of the regulations, so he had to qualify the next day. His speed was 5th fastest, but as a second-day qualifier, he'll start well back in the field. This month has not been without incident at Indianapolis. Early in the month, this was Herm Johnson hitting the wall in the first turn during practice. His injuries were serious to his feet and to his back. He's still in the hospital, in a brace, but will recover and hopes to drive again. By the way, it's the 2nd year in a row that Herm has crashed at Indy. The bad luck that his dog Mario Andretti here, since his only win in 1969, continued in the wake after he qualified for the 2nd row. This crash caused Mario only minor physical injuries, but his spirit was crushed again along with his car. It was sent back to England, but repairs couldn't be completed, so he'll start near the back of the field in a backup car. During final carburation tests, Dennis Firestone came spinning wildly out of the 4th turn, taking Roberto Moreno with him. Both cars slid down the pits out of control, damaging the cars of George Snyder and Jose Lagarza. Again, tragedy was avoided, no serious injuries, but the incident caused some changes at the back of the starting grid. The next day, Dennis Firestone's battered car was withdrawn. That opened up a slot for 52-year-old Dick Simon, the oldest man ever to start in this race. So the stage is set for a race that has made a new kind of Indy history even before the green flag falls. And they've been racing here since 1911. ABC Sports presents From the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indianapolis, Indiana, the 1986 running of the Indianapolis 500. Well, here we are again. I'm Jim McKay reporting live back home again and again and again in Indiana. The weather is finally here for us. It's 75 degrees now. They say it will reach the mid-80s with heavy humidity. 20% chance of rain, but even if it comes, it should come in the late afternoon or in the evening. So it looks like we're okay for a race today. In addition to the usual question of who's going to win the race, there are a number of other questions to be addressed here, and we will address them in a couple of minutes. One, for example, is what about the drivers? What about this long delay? How does it affect them psychologically? They are, after all, human beings. What about the cars? Race cars are meant to be run, not sit still. They've been sitting still for more than a week now, except for a very brief and slow practice session that was allowed yesterday. Still, however, this is the fastest field in the history of Indianapolis, and a fascinating one as far as the dramatis personae are concerned. For example, we have, as we said, two fathers and sons here, the Unsers and the Andrettis. We have brothers in the field, the Bettenhausens. We have half-brothers, Johnny Parsons and Pancho Carter. We have more foreign drivers than we have ever had in a long time. There are 9 of them, 10 actually, if you count Mario Andretti, who, of course, was born in Italy. We said we have the oldest driver, Dick Simon, at age 52. Remember, though, that Mario Andretti will be starting near the back of the field because he crashed his regular car in practice and is driving a backup car. We expect him to be charging from the start and also charging from the rear. Will be the only man ever to have won this race 4 times at age 51. Back again, A.J. Foyt. Well, right now, Jack Arute is down with the pole sitter, Rick Mears.
And, Jim, the pole sitter, Rick Mears, you may hold the distinction of having held the pole at Indianapolis longer than anyone, 21 days. Are you ready for the race today, Rick?
Well, I hope so. You know, it's. I think the layoff didn't really hurt anything. It just gives us a chance to regroup and get ready for this Saturday and let all the people come back out and everything. So I think everything's going to work out well.
But what about the mental part of it? Is there any tricks in the mind? Are you concerned at all? You didn't even take the car out for that warm-up session yesterday.
No, not really. You know, by going the day-to-day like we were early in the week, that's tough because you never know when you get up one morning to the next what it's going to be. So when they actually called it and decided to go today on Saturday, it was really a break then. Mentally, you could just kind of regroup, relax a little bit, turn everything off, and then get started again Friday.
Well, 3 days is too short of a time to go back to Bakersfield, your hometown. So what did you do during that period?
Oh, we just kind of laid low around here, really. We did a little testing at Milwaukee and went out and hit a few golf balls here and just kind of relaxed a little bit.
Showtime, though, now. And, Jim, he's ready. He'll start on the inside of that front row.
Okay, thanks very much, Jack. And also recharged and ready to rev up again is our commentary team who'll be doing not the play-by-play, but the lap, I guess you would call it commentary. My ABC colleague Jim Lampley and Sam Posey. Here we go.
Kind of startling to be here on a dry day, isn't it, Jim? A day on which the lyrics back home in Indiana have a new significance for all of us. Sam, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to address the 2 specific questions Jim has raised about the effect of the delay on the cars and the drivers. But apropos of that conversation with Mears, I think your assessment of his talent, mentioned during the rain last week, bears repeating.
Well, I had said that I thought it was significant that when Rick's first victory came here at the track, it was at the expense of A.J. Foyt, who finished second. My prediction is that Rick Mears will rewrite the Indy record books. And when he finally winds down his career here, which may be a long time away, because remember, he's only 34 now, that all of A.J. Foyt's records will be Rick Mears's.
Well, now, in order to take a step toward that today, he'll have to overcome whatever the effects are of that delay. What are the effects on car first, then driver?
I really don't think, I know Jim mentioned it, but I don't think there's any effect at all on the cars. It's a little hotter today. It would have been better for them. They would have run better on cool conditions. And curiously, the drivers, I think, are relatively unaffected. Surprisingly, they're a lot like actors. They're used to waiting. Waiting's part of their metabolism. I think, and Rick mentioned this just now, that when the decision was made by the Speedway to reschedule the race for today and not try to hold it during the week, that almost every driver here was delighted with that decision. It allowed the tension to be defused and then refocused everyone on the same wavelength, pointing to this moment right now. The only thing that surprised me, frankly, was how late that tension started to build. As recently as yesterday afternoon, Tom Sneva was hitting a few golf balls. The Andrettis were lounging around the pool. Mears was doing the golfing. He said he'd also been out with this unusual varmint pistol that he has, shooting small animals. Just now, the tension has really come back.
I think it's worth noting that during the brief practice session Jim McKay mentioned yesterday, 30 minutes at only 120 miles per hour, 9 of the 33 drivers Rick Mears among them, Jim, elected not to even take their cars on the track.
Absolutely. Well, not too many people elected not to come back, except, when you figure that they came from all over the nation last weekend, many of them had to go back to their jobs, and yet somehow or other, these stands are filling up, and it's still almost an hour until race time. So the cars are ready, the drivers are ready, and so are the fans. So are you, I hope. Stand by.
This live ABC sports presentation of the 70th Indianapolis 500 is being brought to you by Chevrolet, who invite you to drive today's Chevy, live today's Chevy. By Sears New Century, come see all the ways we've changed and all the ways we haven't. By Miller Beer, Miller made the American way since 1855. And by the Breakfast of Champions, Wheaties, what the big boys eat.
Great etched in your memory here at Indianapolis, like the terrifying crash of Salt Walther on the start in 1973, or A.J. Foyt winning his 4th Indianapolis 500. There was such a moment last year. Remember, Mario Andretti was leading the race, but closing in on him, and the other red car was young Danny Sullivan. Going into turn 1, suddenly they were side by side. It was then that Sullivan made his move, moving briefly ahead, but then getting loose, losing it. Spinning wildly, almost hitting the wall. Somehow, Andretti, with a miraculous driving performance, getting by him, taking the lead, continuing in the race, and more miraculously, Sullivan himself continuing in the race, not only doing that, but in time, repassing Andretti, and wonder of wonders, Danny Sullivan winning the Indianapolis 500 of 1985. A moment to remember, and right now, Larry Newber is down in the garage area with none other than Larry.
Well, Danny Sullivan, I assume you have seen that spin a couple of times over the last year. What is it, luck or skill to get you out of something like that?
Well, I think basically the first part of it was just luck and being down so low off the apron, but I think there was a little skill in the second half, just once I faced turn 2, just to gather it up and be cool enough to not do anything drastic and spin it again.
Winning the Indianapolis 500 truly changes your life, doesn't it, Danny?
Absolutely, about as much as that spin. You know, it's been a fantastic year, and I'd like to have another year like that, but it's been great just with the recognizability, demands, and everything. It's been tremendous. I've enjoyed my reign as champion.
Okay, today, you start alongside of your teammate. Certainly you and Rick have had ample opportunity to get together. Have you discussed exactly what you're going to do? Are you going to communicate by hand signals or maybe visually during the parade lap?
No, not really. We just talked about what we thought was the best to do at the start, and we've also talked to Michael as well. And, because we just all want to get through the first turn cleanly and all of that. And we have to remember that there's 3 people across the front row, and all the other races we do, there's 2. So we said, don't forget if somebody pinches one of us to remember there's another guy in there someplace as well. And we just want to get through safely. It's a 200-lap race, 500 miles, and we've got plenty of time.
One of the 2 clear-cut favorites in this race, Jim, Danny Sullivan.
Okay, Larry, thank you very much. Well, here's something, a fairly recent vintage here, the luxury suites in turn 4. We are told that they go for up to $110,000 a year, and remember, there's only one event here a year, the Indianapolis 500. Those were the suites up high there. Of course, these are regular grandstands. Over in turn 2, these are older luxury suites. That's actually a motel looking over the second turn. Told that they go up to around $45,000. There's a bedroom and a living room and a regular motel setup. Right now we're going back down to the garage area again, and Al Troutwig. Al?
Jim, if you're looking for a sign as to whether Mario Andretti's luck at Indianapolis may change, how about this? The winningest number on a car at Indianapolis is the number 2. It has won here 8 times, more than any other. And in 1969, the number 2 was on the car of Mario Andretti. Mario, have you thought about anything like that coming into this race?
Well, sure. I pay attention to some of I take notice, I should say. But all I can say, it's a good omen, and I hope the good omen just works out the way it should be.
Of course, well documented already today is some of the bad luck that you had this month, starting in row 10. What will that create in terms of an atmosphere for you in the first few laps of this race?
Well, quite tense in the sense that I know what to expect, and that is for sure a lot of traffic ahead of me. So this is something that didn't change by the fact that we postponed a week. So I had more time to just dwell on it, but again, it's just a matter of getting down to business and trying to just get rid of some of that traffic. That's the thing, and that's what we're anxious to do now, and it's about to happen.
Mario, does your accident with Kevin Cogan a few years back affect your anxiety at the start of the Indianapolis 500 today?
I think everybody learns from something like that, and naturally, as I said, it was a great disappointment at the time, and no one wants this to reoccur. So, as I said, whether you're a doer or a victim, still, I think it wakes you up, and as I said, maybe you can be a little safer the next time around.
All right, Mario, thanks for your time. Have a great trip today. Mario Andretti, a little stir-crazy, he said, from sitting around all week and ready to race. Back to you, Jim.
All right, Al, an interesting superimposition there that he started 32nd in 1981 and finished second in the race. Could that be a prophecy of things to come? Now, for the first time since we've been here, we're hearing the sound of racing engines. This is a brief warm-up period that is allowed. The drivers, of course, are back down in the garage area, but the engines are being warmed up by the mechanics simply for that reason, to see if everything is okay. Then they'll be turned off again. Some of them have umbrellas over the cockpit, not this particular one here, but many of them do, to keep the cockpit area somewhat cool for the driver, because it's going to be extremely hot out there today, and also humid, and they can feel that in the race car. These cars are tailored to the driver's body. They're very, very snug. There is the pole-sitting car of Rick Mears, number 4. You'll be able to spot that on the racetrack. And there's one of the umbrellas. Not for rain this week, most gratefully, but to keep off the sun. Now, as we said, the drivers are not there yet, but inside you won't be able to see the man, and we can't see inside the cockpit. However, it's a very fascinating place, and a man who knows what it's like to be in there, having driven in the race, is Sam Posey.
This is roughly the view the driver has of his cockpit. During the race, you're naturally reluctant to look away from the track for more than a split second, so the layout is kept simple. On the steering wheel, within reach of the driver's thumbs, is the ignition switch and the radio button, which you push when you want to talk to your crew chief in the pit. Just beyond the wheel are 3 gauges installed in such a way that when the engine is running and everything's okay, the needles point straight up. On the right, the tachometer. Maximum revs in the race would be about 10,800. In the middle, the turbo boost gauge. You want to see it steady at about 47 inches. To the left, the water temperature, calibrated in degrees centigrade. You watch this one because high temperatures could mean debris is blocking a radiator and you should pit. 2 test switches allow you to check vital warning lights. Low oil pressure, the worst news you can have. The engine's in trouble. The fuel pressure light flickers at first to warn you, then comes on steady when you've got about a lap's worth left of fuel left. Out of the driver's line of sight, but within convenient reach, is the knob which controls the amount of turbo boost. More boost, more speed. These blue knobs are turned to stiffen or soften the shock absorber. To the left of the driver are the levers which get a lot of use. Levers which adjust the sway bars, which change the car's handling. On the right, the gear shift, 5 speed, but only 5th gear is used out on the track. On the top of the dash, where it can't be hit accidentally, the button that sets off the fire extinguisher. So that's it. Simple and functional. There to serve and inform the driver, not distract him.
Well, that was the office, and there is the businessman, Rick Mears, out on the tarmac now, out in view of the crowd. They give a lot of pit passes out here for before the race, and that's Rick's mother there, wishing him good luck. Boy, tough emotional situation for all of the families of these drivers, as well as for the drivers themselves. The moment grows closer.
Every Monday through Friday, Mike Horner drives his Chevy S10 4x4 to work.
Hi, Mike.
But on Friday, November 9th, Mike made a different kind of commute. The Baja 1000, North America's most punishing off-road race. Could an everyday Chevy S10 survive? It not only survived, it won its class. So no matter what kind of commute you have to make, nothing works like a Chevy truck.
Now get 5.9 financing on new S10 pickups. Length of finance contract is limited.
Hey, old buddy! My mower broke down. Mind if I borrow yours?
Sure. Old buddy.
Why is it that the grass is always greener wherever there's a John Deere lawnmower?
Oh, you weren't around, so I helped myself.
Because you can always depend on a John Deere lawnmower to keep running when others don't. It's got adjustable speed drive, a blade brake clutch, and a 2 or 4 cycle engine.
Don't tell me. Your lawnmower's not working.
I don't even own one.
Nothing runs like a Deere.
Radio Shack understands that a computer purchase is a serious personal and business decision. But what's really important is the company behind the computer. At Radio Shack, when you buy a computer, you buy a company. A company committed to technology, service, and support. We'll be here when you need us. With a telephone hotline, training, education, and excellent service. Tandy Computers, in business, for business. Tandy, clearly superior.
To get rid of loose and peeling paint, you can get all worked up or get a Wagner powder.
Many of them are here, and as we say, the area continues to fill up. It's 35 minutes before race time, and we're going to have a big crowd. Right now, again, live to Jack Arute and the legend, A.J. Foyt.
Jim, when you talk about Indianapolis, you've got to say A.J. Foyt. He's won it 4 times, the only driver to do it. First question, A.J., a natural one. Can you do it today and make it 5?
I think we're going to run awful strong. I think we've got a good shot at making it 5. We've got a long ways to go in the field, and we're going to have a few breaks.
Well, now, looking at the weather, it's much different than last week, but it's also beginning to get quite hot. Does that change the strategy? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, we planned on a hot day, so I think it'd be in our favor. We did change the wastegate and the blower location on our marches, same as Penske did, and I think that'll be in our favor today.
So your concerns then are in the CV joints, the half shafts or drive shafts as they're called, that they may fail during the race if you didn't change it?
Well, that's quite true, and even though we changed it, a lot of cars are still having problems. We've had some problems too, so I think we got it whipped.
You have started more Indianapolis 500s consecutively than any other driver, and you've seen it go from 150 miles an hour to over 200. Getting faster as you get older.
That's what they tell me, and that's what it looks like.
What about the future for A.J. Foyt? You're going to run competitively here at Indianapolis and then go the rest of the season, or you're limiting your schedule a little bit?
Well, we're kind of limiting our schedule. We've got a lot of testing to do on the V6 Chevrolet, and we just want to have it really where it's a good race motor.
Well, A.J. Foyt starting in the back, but he'll be carving his way to the front. Another guy that's up front, though, is with Larry Newberg. Larry?
Well, there are many ways to show the pre-race tension, and here is Al Unser Sr. demonstrating how tight it is down here in the pit area, lounging on a little cart here, waiting to talk to us. $1.7 million you won at this racetrack. It's been very kind to you.
Have I won that much? I wished the teams have. Indianapolis is, I've been very fortunate here, so it's good.
Al, you are running the most unusual configuration in terms of chassis and engine at today's race. A Penske chassis and a Chevrolet Ilmor engine. Is this car ready?
Well, I think it is, Larry. I think that the car is, and I think the engine is. I think that Chevrolet has done a fantastic job on trying to get the Penske car ready, and I think we'll be in good shape. Just like anything, you never know in a race, and always something unfortunate that can happen. But I feel the package is ready, yes.
If there is a professional racing driver who has demonstrated the ability to finish this race, Al, it has been you. The last 4 races in a row, you finished in the top 5. What is the secret to making a car last 500 miles at this place?
Well, Larry, I think having a crew. The Penske team, they're just strong. Clive, my chief mechanic, they just, between all of them, they do such a job that's what makes it all. And then the driver, he just sits there and makes sure that he does everything right, hopefully, and you make it all come together.
Not only top 5 the last 4 years, but this is one of the people in today's race who's won this contest 3 times, Jim.
The driver just sits there. He's spoken like a 3-time winner of the race, out today to try to tie A.J. Foyt for most victories in the Indianapolis 500. A member, of course, of the Roger Penske team. Up in front of him, he's in the middle of row 2, remember. Up in front of 46-year-old Al Unser Sr. will be his teammates, Rick Mears and Danny Sullivan. Now, last Sunday, we had an opportunity during our 5-hour and 43-minute bill to introduce you in some depth to Rick Mears, the man on the pole. But what about his teammate? What about the defending champion here this year, Danny Sullivan? Here he is. Danny Sullivan will remember this moment all his life. Spinning wildly, out of control while leading the Indianapolis 500. Mario Andretti ducking below him with a virtuoso driving performance. It looked like he had thrown away the opportunity of his career, but not so. Sullivan in time regained the lead and won the great race at age 35. After the win, life got quite hectic for Danny and for his girlfriend, Julie.
She summarized it probably best when I won Indy on May 26th. And I went home to Aspen on December 22nd. And up until that time, I'd had 3 days off.
It was a busy time, all right, but Danny used those days productively. Here, for example, he was winning the last race of the year on the road course in Miami. And after that, the parties, the dancing, the speeches, an appearance on Miami Vice, and the jet set life at his home in Aspen. Did he still keep his eye on the main chance?
James Garner really summed it up the best. He said, you know, all this stuff that's going on is great, but don't forget what put you here. You know, don't lose sight of that. And I think that's the thing that I work at the hardest, is not to get wrapped up in all the hoopla. I remember the days of being poor and sleeping in the back of my car and struggling to get this and struggling to get that, and I don't ever want that again.
So the Danny Sullivan you see on the race course and in the discos is not the Danny Sullivan who strives and works for long, often boring hours. Success doesn't come from parties. Parties come from success. Success comes from the weightlifting and the endless practice, lap after lap after lap. Danny Sullivan is a professional.
Out there right now, and I want to grasp it, and I don't want to miss anything, and I don't want to miss any opportunities, because I sat around for so many years waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for that drive, waiting for somebody to call me and offer me something, just waiting and saying, okay, what can I do now, and what can I do now? And now when it comes, I'm not about to give it up. It may never happen again.
The opportunity will happen again in just about a half an hour now for Danny Sullivan. Perhaps over-breathing just a little bit right at this moment as he stands ready for the race. Now let's go down to the garage area again and Al Troutwig.
Jim, Michael Andretti is breathing just fine. He seems as cool as he has the entire month as he prepares to start the Indianapolis 500 for the third time. The difference this year, of course, is that Michael was a winner in Long Beach, the last race before Indianapolis. And it has been complicated perhaps by the fact that you've waited around a week. In one word, what was this week of waiting like?
Oh, it was tough in a lot of ways. You know, you just have to sit and wait, and your nerves just seem to build and get worse and worse and worse. But, you know, it's finally here, so let's get it over with.
Michael, you will be in the outside of the front row. We have mentioned in previous weeks with you that normally is the first lap leader, first one out of the blocks. Do you see it that way for yourself?
Oh, I don't know. We'll play it by ear. You know, if I get the jump on Rick, you know, hopefully I'll make it to the first corner first. If not, I'll just fall behind Danny or Rick. You know, you're not going to win this race in the first turn.
I have watched your crew, and you performed throughout this month in Indianapolis this May. And as we like to say at ABC Sports, you and Barry Green, your crew chief, are squared away. Do you almost feel sometimes you're almost too prepared that something has to go wrong?
Well, sometimes you get that feeling, you know, but, you know, I think we've done the best we could, and now we need a little luck to go along with it.
Say something to your father this morning?
Oh, just told him good luck, and I hope to see him out there.
All right, Michael Andretti. Back to you, Jim Lampley, with Sam Posey.
All right, thank you very much, Al Troutwig. Al, there in the brand new garage area, which has changed the personality of this place a little bit. But let's talk about personality a second. Danny Sullivan. Watching the profile, you're reminded of Danny's twin talents, his driving talent, which is considerable, his public relations talent, which may be even greater.
Well, of course, we think of him as the great Indy champion, the glamorous hero of this race last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Danny's own assessment of himself was somewhat more sober. I mean, remember that he is basically a road racer. That's where his background comes from, and the business of racing ovals is relatively new to him, and it really hasn't come that easily. Remember that as a rookie here, he had a crash into the wall in turn 4. In his second year, he had another crash under the yellow, and last year he had that spin, that horrendous spin, which could so easily have put him out of the race. So in 3 tries, he has yet to get through the 500-mile race without a major incident. It makes me wonder, and I don't know how you feel about it, he looks nervous to me now, if he might not be a little careful this time out, a little more cautious than in some ways you'd think of a past winner.
Blasphemy to devotees of the spin and win philosophy. You think it'll help him?
It could be the way to race today. It's hot, and I think more is going to go wrong than usually does in a 500-mile race, which is really saying something.
All right, well, nothing is going wrong with the crowd, Jim McKay, which continues to pour in.
No question about that. They're still coming in with less than a half an hour till race time. As we said earlier, there are seats for more than 250,000 people here. My goodness, that alone is twice the number of people who came to the Kentucky Derby this year. In addition to the seats, however, there are the people in the infield, some of them a little wild at times, but others families who come here and picnic, set up little tents, meet people they only meet once a year in the very same place. We'll be back. That's a shot from high overhead in the cruising Goodyear blimp with us again today. If you'll permit, there it is. High in the blue skies of Indianapolis today. One personal comment, I think an absolutely tremendous job was done here last Sunday, and I would think you'd agree, by our three men in the garage area. Let's get a comment from each of them now, starting with Jack Arute.
Jim, the thing that I'm most impressed with in our conversations throughout the day here is with blue skies come high temperatures. A lot of concern by the drivers and the crew chiefs as to whether that'll affect them mechanically during the course of the race. Time will only tell, but we'll be down on pit road to let you know if failures do come, and they'll normally come back by the rear end, back by the CV joints and the drive shafts. Larry?
Jack, we saw a week ago Thursday during the normal carburation test day how perilous it can be down here. But under enormous odds, precise work has to be done. Now, these cars will burn up about a gallon of fuel for every 2/3 of a lap. They carry 40 gallons, so that means they'll be coming in every 25 laps. The crews will not get a rest. Watch for adjustments being made to the front wing, maybe to the rear shocks. And our information is that if this race goes completely green, which it normally does not, and with this track, which is expected to be very fast today, fuel might be a question to watch very carefully near the end of the race. Al?
Larry, of course, we'll be on pit road where we will be witness to many nervous men and women who could win or lose today's race without ever sitting behind the steering wheel. They are, of course, the pit crews, and they will determine the success of their day during those frantic moments when their driver is on pit road. We should remember that the vivid memories of Indianapolis are not from flawless drives, but from mistakes. And we will, although these people will try to make sure they don't make the critical mistake today, see mistakes made, and that should provide some interesting stories. I also want to tell you about an additional member of our ABC Sports crew here today, Dr. Joe Randolph, who will be stationed at the Hanna Medical Center should we need him there, although I hope that we never hear a word from him today. On behalf of the crew, having watched more weather reports than I think we would have liked to over the past week, I would like to perform one more thing, and it's an umbrella-ectomy. Back to you, Jim.
That may be the last levity for a while as we are getting very close to the start of the race. And Sam, what goes through the minds of the 33 men in the cockpits now?
Well, this is the point where things really start to speed up. Time seems to really rush ahead. And I think what you don't think about is your family. And you don't think about your light flashing in front of you. It's nothing like that. What you think about and what you're praying for is you don't screw up. Drivers at this point may have had great hopes earlier in the month, but right here and now they become very conservative. And, you know, you're trying to tell yourself it's just another race, even though you know darn well it's the Indy 500 and it's not just another race, but you're trying to calm yourself down.
It's fascinating now as we watch them to focus in on some little details. Rick Mears handing his gold watch to his girlfriend to hold for the next few hours. Let's focus in now on some of the principles in the race again, starting with those at the front of the pack. Two-time winner Rick Mears will start on the pole for the third time in his career. The acknowledged star of Penske Racing qualified his March Cosworth number 4 car at nearly 217 miles per hour, a new record, and almost 1.5 miles per hour faster than teammate Danny Sullivan, the defending champion who will start in the middle of row 1. Much of Sullivan's past week has been devoted to social and publicity obligations not incumbent on the other drivers, but he is again a threat to find victory lane, as is the race's youngest competitor, 23-year-old Michael Andretti, who qualified on the outside of the front row at 214.5 miles per hour. Andretti won the last previous championship car event, the Long Beach Grand Prix. Row 2 finds 33-year-old Bobby Rahal on the inside. It's the third time Rahal has qualified near the front of the pack, and observers agree he should win the race sooner or later. Al Unser Sr. has won it 3 times. Now he starts 5th in a PC-15 Chevrolet car, making its first race appearance at the Speedway. Unser is 46. His last championship came 8 years ago. Kevin Cogan has his best qualifying position since the 1982 incident which temporarily marred his career. Cogan's victory at Phoenix last month helped dim the memory of this crash 4 years ago when he started in the middle of row 1 and lost control of his car just as the green flag appeared. Tom Sneva is inside row 3. The sport's most independent spirit has had a colorful career at Indianapolis, having survived one of the most spectacular crashes in Speedway history. A fiery 1975 encounter with the wall in turn 2 to eventually win the pole 3 times and the race itself in 1983. Roberto Guerrero has been quietly effective. Second in 1984, third a year ago, in position to threaten again this year from the middle of the third row. The 9th qualifier is Al Unser Jr., 4th in his family to be competitive in this race, likely at some point to become the 3rd to win it. Of 8 Lola chassis in the field, his is closest to the front. 2 legends start from farther back. A.J. Foyt posted the 5th fastest qualifying speed, but the fact that it came on day 2 puts a lot of traffic between the race's only 4-time winner and a record 5th checkered flag. And Mario Andretti will be even farther to the rear, despite an initial qualifying run which seemed to place him comfortably in row 2. Andretti was forced into his backup car and out of his original spot on the grid by this practice crash, one of the most frightening in his career of great achievements and powerful frustration. We are ready now for the national anthem to be sung here by television actor and a co-owner of one of the cars, David Hasselhoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, a salute to the United States of America, presenting David Hasselhoff, who joins the 74th Army Band of Fort Benjamin Harrison as they combine to present our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glass, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And now the heart begins to race just a little more. That crowd will clear off of the front straight. 33 men will be left alone to do their business. Sam Posey, time for you to begin talking about the competitive aspects. How do you see the race?
Well, I think the first question, we just saw a shot of Mario standing there. Can he make it through the pack unscathed? That's the first thing. I know from talking to him, he is prepared to take exceptional risks. He just knows at this stage in his career, first is really all that means anything to him. And interesting, the contrast between him at that pool yesterday doing absolutely nothing and the violence of what he's about to attempt. It just sticks with me. We'll have an isolated camera in a crane following that. We'll talk about the 2 favorites in just a second, but there are 5 men in this race who have never won the race who have a very, very good shot at it today. Emerson Fittipaldi, the Brazilian former world driving champion who led this race here last year, good shot. His teammate Kevin Cogan, who won the opener this year at Phoenix, very, very confident man all of a sudden, Kevin Cogan. Michael Andretti, just as loose as you can get, starting from the front row. We've seen him in the interview. He is unencumbered, it seems, by any pressure other than to just get out there and have a good time, as he might, given his age. Bobby Rahal, the man with the briefcase. You know, he has the kind of mind that I think is suited to today's racing, calculated, a strategist of the first water. And finally, little Al Unser, who is going to win this race someday, Jim, and who knows, it might be today.
Why not his father, Al Unser Sr.?
Well, I think that car, which has an unproven engine as well as chassis, has a good chance to run the distance. It's entered by the Penske team. But frankly, in an effort to run the distance with the Chevrolet engine, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole thing isn't a little bit detuned. I'm not sure he'll be right on the pace.
Okay, so if it comes down, as I know it is your instinct to believe it will, to a mano between Mears and Sullivan, which of the 2 do you think you'd most like to be right now?
Do you have a coin?
I've been trying to reach for one and haven't been able to get it out of my pocket.
I believe Rick Mears is the better driver of the two, more experienced, certainly on the ovals. But things can happen in a 500-mile race, and it may easily be that it's a battle between the two, and I just wouldn't want to make a choice.
All right. We will see as the race develops. Jim McKay, some very big moments are coming up.
No question about that. Let's take a quick break and come back.
We have held hands across America.
Okay, back at Indianapolis again. A look at the crowd. We've had the invocation, and the clergyman who gave it after a very moving invocation ended up by saying, "And please God, no more rain until tomorrow." Now the playing of
We
taps.
remember the true meaning of Memorial Day as we pause here in a moment of silence to pay homage to those individuals who have given their lives unselfishly and unafraid to make it possible for us to witness as free men the world's greatest sporting event. We also pay homage to those men who have given their lives unselfishly and without fear to make racing the world's most spectacular spectator sport.
It's difficult to separate your emotions here from taps to the start of the race with all its attendant excitement and danger. But then this is Mid-America, which inspires varied emotions itself. This is the land that inspired Theodore Dreiser to write his disturbing book, An American Tragedy. It is also the country that moved Dreiser's brother, known professionally as Paul Dresser, to write the nostalgic song On the Banks of the Wabash, which was played here earlier this morning. A British newspaper yesterday quoted a sociology professor as saying that Indy represents what the U.S. is all about and stands for in the world, power and control. I would suggest that it represents the Americans' quest toward the frontier, in this case, the frontier of speed, combined with a childlike need for roots, for security. That's a need, I think, that will be summed up here in a matter of seconds for us in the traditional singing of Back Home Again in Indiana. It will be sung for us by John Davies, the artist-in-residence of the Indianapolis Opera Company.
Introduce the artist-in-residence from the Indianapolis Opera, John Davies, singing the traditional Back Home Again in Indiana.
And still the emotions continue to churn and build here. There is pleasure, extreme pleasure, basking in the sun of a late spring Indiana day, but there's still the tension of waiting and waiting and waiting. And now the balloon's going up to signal to the surrounding countryside that it's almost time for that prize. the one that was uttered for so many years by the man who made the Speedway, Tony Holman. Today it will be said by his widow, Mrs. Mary Holman.
We have arrived at that time.
Most of the people on their feet. The cars are obviously in line now. The drivers poised and ready. The engines will actually be started by crew members
At the time,
in the back. No self-starters in these. And now, the moment has arrived for the traditional prize.
And here, against the traditional match, is the chairman of the board of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Mrs. Tony F. Holman.
And so the sound of the engines dominates the scene now, but the real story is inside the car, inside the helmet, inside the racing coverall. The story is in the fingers tensed inside the glove, the race plan waiting in the mind since last Sunday, the small fear that gnaws at the most courageous spirit. The real story is inside the 33 men who are about to race at Indy. That's Rick Mears, twice a winner here. Now on the comeback trail at age 34, conscious that he has the fastest car in Indianapolis history under him. Conscious, too, of the pain that still lingers in his feet and legs long after the accident that almost ended his career. Mears on the inside of row 1. Next to him, Danny Sullivan, the defending champion. The swinging bachelor image is left to the public relations man now. This is 36-year-old Danny Sullivan, who used to sleep in the back of his car out to prove that last year's victory was no fluke. Rounding out the first row, this is 23-year-old Michael Andretti, aware of the two experienced champions inside him on the front row. Not a rookie trying to blaze a new trail, but a son trying to expand the family tradition. A tough job for anybody at best. Moving back to the second row, there's old Al Unser at age 46. He's the opposite of Michael, a three-time champion here. He tries to win one more to tie A.J. Foyt's record of 4 victories, and he's not unaware that his son sits in the row behind him, Al Unser Jr. Somewhere back there, old A.J., as we mentioned, he'll have to charge from the back, and it is his habit. It is his wont. And the same is true of Mario Andretti, way back there in the 10th row, remember. And Andretti trying to win his second Indy, 17 years after he won his only one in 1969. It appears that all the cars have gotten started. That's always the first item of business here. And they are, oh, whoops, wait a minute. Let's see, who do we have there? Tom Steva's car. Now, underway. Yep. It always seems to be somebody who almost gets left there, and this time, Tom Sneva. So there they are.
America loved Teddy.
Jim Lampley along with Sam Posey, and we are back now as the cars are on the track, and all 33 of them complete the first of 2 parade laps. There will be another parade lap after this. It takes place at the extremely docile speed of about 70 to 80 miles per hour. Then a pace lap during which the cars will speed up to about 120 miles per hour. And if they are in proper order, at the end of the pace lap, neatly fitted into their 11 rows, then they will get the green flag that signifies the beginning of the 1986 Indianapolis 500. Sam Posey, this is a last opportunity for the drivers to collect themselves, to feel the cars under them, some of them moving back and forth, as you can see there, to warm up their tires. A last opportunity to really begin to sense what it's going to be like to start this race.
Well, at this moment, you're really 2 people emotionally. One wants to react to all this and to let it really wash over you that you're in the Indy 500. The other part of you is that rather tough, unemotional person that you have to be to have gotten here in the first place. I can remember warming up the tires, and you saw a couple of the cars do zigzagging back and forth, checking the gauges, and crying all at the same time.
You see them going by the huge grandstands which flank the front straightaway. The cars at the front of the pack are now into turn 1, and now you see them coming out of turn 1 into the short chute at the south end of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and toward turn 2. We have 3 race cams
installed in cars. We're going to take a look right now at the view from the camera mounted in Danny Sullivan's car. That is the way it looks for someone in row one. Sullivan has dropped just a little bit in back of Rick Mears and Michael Andretti, and now he moves back up between them. Our second race camera is mounted in the car of Ed Pym. Ed Pym, who was a rookie last year, is driving in the fourth row, and that's how it looks to be Ed Pym at this moment on the inside of row number 4. Emerson Fittipaldi and Johnny Rutherford are to the outside of Pym as he begins to first feel the car perform. And finally, our third race cam is mounted in the car of Roberto Moreno of Brazil, and he is all the way back in row 11. That's how it looks to be at the very back of the pack, just in front of Moreno, and to his right, the red car belongs to Mario Andretti. Not that one which just darted into the picture on the right, but the one farther up there is Andretti's. And here, once again, a look at the point of view of one Danny Sullivan.
Well, you know what's going through his mind, and it's all focusing on the start, Jim, because those front row guys, each one of them would like to lead, not just for the prestige, not just for the fact that there's $25,000 riding on the 10th lap, incidentally, the leader of the 10th lap, but primarily so that they won't experience the turbulence and buffeting that you experience if you're following closely behind another car. They just would like to be in the clear.
Now the cars turn back onto the front straight. See them moving out of turn 4 onto the front straight, and as they come toward us this time, we expect the pace lap to begin. On the pace lap, the cars speed up to 120 miles per hour. And the adrenaline begins to rush. Quickly now again, a tour of the rows. Row 1, Rick Mears, Danny Sullivan, and Michael Andretti. In row 2, Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Sr., and Kevin Kogan. In row 3, Tom Sneva, Roberto Guerrero, and Al Unser Jr. Row 4, Ed Pym, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Johnny Rutherford. Row 5, Randy Lanier, Pancho Carter, and Jacques Villeneuve. Row 6, Danny Angaya, Jose Garza, Tony Bettenhausen. Row 7, Ari Lyondike, Jeff Brabham, the slowest car in the field, and in a precarious position there, A.J. Foyt. Row 8, Raul Bazell, Scott Brayton and Phil Kruger. Row 9, Chip Ganassi, Jim Crawford, and Rich Vogler. Row 10, Parsons, Bettenhausen, and Mario Andretti. And row 11, George Snyder, Roberto Moreno, and the man who was added to the field as an alternate, Dick Simon. The pace car is being driven by the legendary test pilot, Chuck Yeager, a man with a great deal of kinship in his career to what the drivers experience here.
Well, the whole concept, of course, of the right stuff as introduced by author Tom Wolfe pertains in a great many ways to racing drivers. There are some differences between racing drivers and pilots, but not a great many. And certainly the similarities, especially at a moment like this, overwhelm the differences. Both love the limelight. Both are willing to risk their hides in order to experience it. I wouldn't like that very much. No, I don't think that's too neat, although it will probably have dissipated by the time they come around. It's got to be in their mind that it's going to be there. I wonder if that could lead to one more pace lap, Jim. I've never seen a smoke bomb on the back straight like that. It seems very ill-advised to have set it off.
Judging from the speed of the cars, it looks to me as though we may be headed for one more pace lap. We will watch very carefully. Starter Dwayne Sweeney, the USAC official, is the man who determines whether or not to put out the green flag. He's got the yellow out, so we are going to have one more pace lap. And there is Tom Sneva's car. You'll remember that he had trouble getting the car started, and he's obviously had further difficulty now, as you can see that the wheel of the car is up against the inside retaining wall, and it could be that Sneva's day has already ended.
It has. Although now I saw him veer, but I thought he was just warming his tires up particularly savagely back in the middle of the pack. Now, is this related to the smoke bomb? Was the bomb some sort of a warning that a car was out? I don't know. But that car is damaged beyond repair as far as getting ready for the start of the race is concerned.
So Tom Sneva, a man who won the race in 1983 and who had been second twice before then, is apparently through for the day. In 1970, a driver named Jim Malloy hit the fourth turn wall on the pace lap and the race had to be halted. It happened a couple of other times. On the parade lap, two cars collided in 1957. Of course, there was the aborted start in 1982 when the chain reaction involving Kogan and Andretti and Foyt and Roger Mears and Dale Whittington temporarily aborted the start of the race. But right now, we are getting ready for another pace lap.
as rescue vehicles take care of Tom Sneva's car.
All right.
Chevrolet introduces Black Magic.
Back live in Indianapolis now, where you see starter Dwayne Sweeney holding a red flag. And on the track, 32 cars are now pulling to a halt and lining back up in their starting position on the front straight. I say 32 because there will be an empty space on the inside of row 3. The space previously occupied by 1983 Indianapolis 500 champion, 3-time runner-up Tom Sneva. There is the car as it is being loaded for removal from the spot where it apparently came a cropper on the backstretch. There is Tom Sneva in the white fire suit, walking, obviously dejectedly, near the truck. And let's go to pit reporter Jack Arute.
Well, Jim, there's a lot of confusion down here in Tom Sneva's pit. We were the first, in fact, to tell them that there was a problem. It seems the radios have been out in Tom Sneva's car during the parade laps and that pace lap. They, in fact, asked me several times, is it on all 4 wheels? They had intended to come in and solve the problem. Then Mike Teagarden from USAC informed him that one wheel was off, but they weren't sure which one. So there's some confusion down here, but we'll stay on top of it.
All right, thank you, Jack Arute. And obviously we will wait to learn more about precisely what happened to Sneva. But now we will take another look at that pace lap. And Sneva's car is somewhere to the left center of your screen, just edging around turn number 2. And you can see it dive off the track, Sam.
Well, Sneva had trouble getting his car started on the grid. I can't imagine there's any corollary between these two events. But right now, he was in trouble there.
There's a look at the pace car as it was being driven by Chuck Yeager. And you could see there in that brief replay that Sneva's car apparently went out of control just as he came out of turn 2. And even though it looks on the screen as though they are traveling very slowly, there is quite obviously enough speed under the cars at that point for them to be damaged considerably if they hit concrete wall.
Oh, yeah.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway is bordered by concrete wall.
He was probably going 100 miles an hour, and Jack Arute ought to tell his crew to forget it. They're going to have the afternoon off on that one. All right, what's going to happen now? In the past, when the race has been red flagged and a car eliminated, there's been a reserve car that's been put in the race. In other words, the 34th or even 35th fastest qualifiers. Not so this year. They don't have those cars standing by, so as you said, Jim, we'll start with only 32 cars. The interesting thing, though, is that the rules are so specific as to the amount of fuel that you can use in the course of the 500 miles that the cars are now being obliged to do more laps, if you see what I mean. When they restart, they'll have to do at least one parade lap, a slow lap, before they can get to the faster pace lap. That there might be a situation where, I'm just taking the worst case as you see Sneva's car, which is too extensively damaged on the left to even consider going. They might have to top up the cars and the tanks in the pits. Let's go down to Jack Arute, see if he has something.
Well, John Anderson is the crew chief for Tom Sneva. And John, you've been very busy trying to ascertain what the damage is on the car. What's the latest report?
Well, it appears as though we've lost the left front corner, and Tom may have damaged the left rear as well. So we're just getting prepared. There's conflicting reports as to what the damage is. So we just got to wait and see what it is when it gets in here.
So those references are to the suspension pieces on the left front of the car?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, early on, when you had gentlemen start your engines, you failed to start. What was the problem there in the initial moments? We saw you had the steering wheel off the car.
The steering wheel is on a spline mechanism that's removable for ease of entry for the driver. We just had a little problem getting the thing on the splines. There was no dramas there.
Any concern that maybe that was the drama that unfolded on the backstretch, that maybe the wheel came unpinned?
I'd be surprised if it did. I don't think that's the problem.
Big question mark over this pit right now. Let's go down
Jack.
to Al Trowig now. He's with Danny Sullivan.
All right, Jack, here, of course, is Danny Sullivan. If there was a problem on the track going down the backstretch, he would have heard it. We've got a brief conversation here with his crew chief, and then we'll get into him in just a moment. Danny, did you see any problem down the backstretch, a smoke bomb or anything that may have caused Tom Sneva to hit?
Well, there was a smoke bomb down there, but that was further down than where Sneva made contact with the wall. He hit just coming out of turn 2. And I didn't see anything. You know, it was behind us, and when we came around, he was just out of the car, and the car was parked in the wall.
Okay, hang in there. I'm told we're going to get this race started someday.
We'll get it done.
All right, back to you, Jim.
All right, thank you very much, Al Troutwig. And one other question mark that you have already raised, Sam Posey, relates to fuel. Will USAC now allow the cars to be refueled in an amount proportionate to what they've already burned in 4 laps around the track?
USAC, of course, being the governing body for this particular race, they make the rules here. Yeah, I would expect so. Given what fuel has been used so far and what more they're going to have to use before the race can be started, I wouldn't be surprised if they would add, say, 5 gallons to the total allotment for the race. That, of course, will see a delay of at least 15 to 20 minutes. Isn't this incredible? Another Indy 500 that can't get going. I mean, this...
Well, and you mentioned that you thought that the psychological situation of the drivers had been brought back to an even plane by the rescheduling to Saturday morning. The opportunity for them to allow their emotions to dissipate and then to re-gear themselves, as it were, for the start of the race. What now does this do to that already precarious psychological position?
Well, this drivers are used to. Things do go wrong at the start of races. In fact, things go wrong for reasons that are so hard to explain. And you think back to Kevin Cogan's crash that triggered the difficult beginning of the 1982 race here. Something went peculiarly wrong that day. Something has gone peculiarly wrong again. So it just shows that when cars are left around for a while and drivers get back into them, sometimes things aren't as you'd expect.
All right, let's go to our third pit reporter, Larry Nuber.
Well, starting right behind Tom Sneva was teammate Ed Pym. Did Tom get back around you, back into position before the incident in the backstretch?
Yes, I don't know what happened to the car at the start there, but he did get back around me. He was in his line in proper position. We were exiting turn 2, and I haven't been racing that long, but I've never seen anything quite like it. He just started to warm his tires up, it looked like, and then the car just went straight left right into the wall. I can only speculate that something happened to the car.
Ed, there was a report of a smoke bomb apparently on the backstretch in one of the parade laps. No reason for that to be involved in that, do you think?
No, that was a red smoke bomb, but that was further on down almost into turn 3. This happened just exiting turn 2. I really don't know what to tell you what happened, Something broke, I guess.
Well, Ed Pym was one of the surprises of this month, qualifying very up near the front, and he was very lucky to escape that incident.
All right, thank you, Larry Nuber. And just to clear something up, I've referred to that lap as a pace lap. I may have been misleading you. The lap was conducted at a speed which made it difficult to tell whether it was indeed a pace lap or a parade lap. It was hard to tell, and I don't think we'll know for a while whether, in fact, Wayne Sweeney intended to start the race when the cars came back around, but he never got the opportunity because of what happened to Tom Sneva.
All right, well, we have news here, which is the arrival of the fuel truck in the pit lane. It right now is at the south end of the pit lane and will slowly go down the lane, refueling all of the tanks. We'll watch that, and we'll be back.
Live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I'm Jim Lampley with Sam Posey. On the right of your screen, you can see the large fuel truck, which is now going from pit to pit and putting 3 extra gallons of methanol fuel into each fuel tank here. That will account or make up for the amount of fuel which was expended on that aborted start of the race. Now, Sam Posey, let's go back for a moment to the smoke bomb. There has been the suggestion here in our commentary, perhaps, that there may have been a relationship between the smoke bomb, which was far down the backstretch, and what happened to Sneva coming out of turn 2. Do you believe there was?
Well, I'm saying there could have been, because when you consider Tom Sneva's point of view, he's very low down in that car. The cars ahead of him have heat rippling off the top of them. What he might have seen suddenly as he looked up as he came out of that turn was the flash of red. I mean, that's a possibility. However, now, as we look at the view from Ed Pym, with Sneva directly ahead of him, we may have a unique chance to figure this out for ourselves. Now, Sneva was apparently just zigzagging to warm up the tires. Try to look beyond Pym's helmet and see if you see that smoke bomb drifting across the track. At this point, it certainly isn't a factor at all. Sneva just appears to be routinely warming his tires up, doing that zigzagging motion. Pym, of course, look at that. Boy.
And we don't yet see the smoke bomb, I think, Sam.
So the smoke bomb, there is no correlation whatever with the smoke bomb. All right, now if we look to that as possibly a mechanical breakage of some kind, you've got to look at these half shafts that we've heard a little bit about, the 2 drive shafts that come from the transmission out to the rear wheels. And I don't think we see the smoke bomb, so let's dismiss that now completely as an issue. But that left rear drive shaft might very well have broken causing power to be fed only to the right rear wheel, which would have steered Sneva straight into the wall like that.
Well, maybe we're going to learn more from Jack Arute. Let's try it. Jack?
Well, Jim, we've learned who the first out of the race, 33rd position, this year goes to Tom Sneva. John Anderson, crew chief for Sneva. They've notified you that you can't bring the car back here to be repaired.
Yes, it's very unfortunate. We feel as though we could have done at least something to get the car ready for the restart, but we haven't even seen the condition of the cars in at the moment, so we're just speculating as to what happened and how badly damaged it is.
Well, there's still some confusion down here on the part of Sneva's pit crew entirely, and here's what's happened. USAC has ruled that you cannot bring the car back here on pit road. That's the only place that you can make repairs during the course of the race. And they've said, no, the car is irreparable. We're going to leave it on the backstretch. You had actually petitioned USAC to be able to bring it back here and bolt on some suspension parts, even though you're not sure exactly what the problem is as far as the damage.
Oh, exactly. There's no point in prematurely saying that's it. Pack up shop. We've just got to go ahead and do what we can to get the thing repaired, and hopefully we'd like to be back in the race, but that remains to be seen with the officials.
30 days of May, and it's all gone up right now without even a green flag lap. Forget what it means to Tom Sneva. What does it mean to guys like you, John Anderson, who labor over these cars in a garage area and gasoline alley day after day after day since the beginning of May?
Well, naturally, we're bitterly disappointed with not even taking the green flag, but there's not much we can do about that. If they decide not to let us come back to the race, we just got to look forward to next week.
Well, next week is at Milwaukee, but there's a new entry in the Indy record book, and it's here in 1986. Tom Sneva's name's next to it.
All right, thanks, Jack Arute. Look around in that pit. We just saw a man walk in very close to you carrying a piece of an automobile suspension. It may be the culprit in what happened. I can see that Jack is going to it right now to give it a look-see. Fair to make an issue of USAC's peremptory decision here, Sam Posey? Of course, they're charged with the responsibility of guaranteeing the safety of the other 32 cars and drivers on the track. Is it your judgment they usually know what they're doing?
Oh, terrific decision. Yeah, it just follows on the heels of a lot of good decisions, I think, made in the last 10 days or so in the face of considerable adversity. You know, what's also interesting is the decision to take all this time to put a mere 3 gallons back in the main fuel tanks, which already contain 280 gallons for the running of this race. I mean, it seems pretty amazing, doesn't it, that 3 gallons would mean anything? It shows you in what detail the fuel consumption is studied here and how crucial it is to the expectations of the team. Those are A.J. Foyt's tanks, incidentally, right there with the Calumet Farms insignia on them. There's Kevin Cogan's tank. They're moving very fast down here. I'd say at this point they are about 2/3 through this job. So they're doing extremely well.
We have just been told, excuse me, Sam, we've just been told, incidentally, that Tom Sneva has made his mandatory visit to the Hanna Medical Center, which is on the infield right here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You look at Roger Penske, the car magnate, who has 3 cars in the first 2 rows of the race, as he chats with pole sitter Rick Mears. And, of course, we'll be hoping to get a word with Tom Sneva as soon as he has cleared the medical process at the Hanna Medical Center. We'll be back with more live right after this.
This live ABC sports presentation of the 70th Indianapolis 500 is brought to you by Miller Beer. Miller made the American way since 1855. By Goodyear, you either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. By Citizen, no other watch expresses time as beautifully. And by Matchlight Instant Lighting Charcoal, the fast-starting charcoal. Matchlight, the fast light.
Hello, but Indianapolis, and if perchance you have just joined us, you haven't missed a single lap. Believe it or not, we have still not seen a wheel turned in competition in the Indianapolis 500. There is Mario Andretti starting way back in the 10th row. He's used to things like that. It was just a couple of years ago that as they were ready to take the green flag, Mario suddenly saw young Kevin Cohen cut in front of him, was unable to avoid him, T-boned him, and the race was stopped at that point. This time it's been, you look at Rick Mears sitting on the pole here, it must be terribly hot inside that cockpit by now and inside the racing coveralls as they're getting back in and getting strapped into their cars again. All of this caused by an accident on the pace lap. If you've just joined us, they were coming out of turn 2 when suddenly Tom Sneeva's car took a quick 90-degree turn to the left across the grass and into the inside retaining wall. There is the car of Tom Sneeva. It had had trouble on the start. It was the last one to be able to get started. We were told at one point that they had trouble with their radio, that he wasn't able to tell them what was going on in the car when it did crash. As a result, however, the race was red flag before the start. They have been allowed to put a certain amount, I believe it was 3 gallons of fuel, into the tanks, but the cars have not been able to return to the pits. Now, we don't know exactly what happened because the crew of Tom Sneeva has no idea. Most of what they know, they heard from our reporters down there. Tom himself had to make the mandatory trip to the Hanna Medical Center. He appears, as far as we know, not to be injured, but that is mandatory when there's a crash of any sort. They have to go to the hospital, so we haven't talked to Tom. The point being that we really don't know what happened inside that race car. So Jim Lampley and our man Sam Posey still standing by here, as we are. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, just that it must be difficult to be a race driver and have to deal with this kind of interruption. You say that it's more or less routine for them, Sam. I find it hard to believe that anything seems routine at the moment that it happened.
I buy that. Yeah, it isn't that routine. It's just that Indianapolis has had such a record of false starts and crashes at the start and problems of one kind or another in the early laps that deep down most of these men have gone through all this before. And yes, a little bit, as Johnny Rutherford once said, yeah, I felt those emotions. You do feel highs and lows, but when you felt them before, it helps you to control them a little bit.
Well, there are some racers here who haven't gone through this a great deal. So is this kind of interruption less likely to affect the Mario Andretti and perhaps more likely to affect an Al Unser Jr., although he's a veteran here by now, a Michael Andretti making only his third start here, or perhaps an Ari Leyendyke the second time around, or some of the rookies, such as...
Well, how about Phil Kruger, for example, or Randy Lanier, or Roberto Moreno, who has our camera in his car? Yes, I think those rookies will be considerably affected. And let's go down right now to Al Troutwig and see what he has.
Sam, I'm with Jack Beckley, who's the technical supervisor for USAC. What was the ruling on Tom Sneeva and his car?
Well, the car was pretty severely damaged, Al, and so they took it back to the through the infield to the Valvoline station to drain the fuel. That's the first thing they're supposed to do. Once the car leaves the course, it's officially out of the race.
Had he brought it back to pit road, what would have happened?
If it would have been workable, I think they would have brought it to pit row, and so the crew could have worked on it.
So now what happens to the car?
Well, the car is officially out of the race, so it's through for the day.
The decision was made to bring the car into the infield as opposed to the pits, and that's what eliminated the car.
Well, I think the wrecker crews pretty well know if a car can be fixed or not, and that's probably their decision. I don't know that. I don't know why they did it, but I would assume that that's why they did it.
So Tom Sneeva's fate may have been decided by the wrecker crew?
Well, I don't know that. They're in touch with control up there, and I'm sure the decision came from the steward.
All right, Jack, thank you very much. Gentlemen, back to you.
Good point, Al Troutwig. Tom Sneeva's fate, it seems there may indeed have been decided by the wrecker crew, though it's likely that there's an official over there at the time.
Oh, I don't know about that. The car was wrecked. I mean, it was run into the wall. I don't think it took a lot to see that the car shouldn't run. They can execute remarkable repairs, but not to that car. As for, the heat sitting around like this, no, it's not really an issue until the cars start to run. That's when the heat becomes an issue. Pushing the cars which are designed to run, at their absolute limit, if you get just an increase of ambient temperature of 5 or 10 degrees, suddenly they become very marginal with their cooling and so on. Look at that, Jim.
That is, I think, inevitable at this point as we are getting ready to watch the event, which has not only the largest single-day attendance of any sports event in the world, but I think can now claim the longest, most extended, most anxiety-ridden, step-by-step build-up in the history of major American sports events. Has there ever been an event which took this long to get started and was delayed for so many reasons? I can't imagine it.
No, but the amazing thing was the wave was going the wrong way. If it had gone the right way, we could have timed it and we might have a race under.
We might have had a lap. All right, we are going to be back, and very shortly we are going to get the gentlemen start your engines command. 1 parade lap, 1 pace lap, and a race.
Well, at some point, somebody is going to take that checkered flag and have their name inscribed on the famous Borg-Warner Trophy, the symbol of victory here at Indianapolis. It's one thing that never changes around here. Some other things haven't changed in a long, long time, and among them are some of the people who run this place. You saw Mary Holman, the widow of Tony, the chairman of the board, and the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Joe Cloutier, has been here, I think, just about since Tony Holman bought the track right after World War II. Joe's been ailing lately, but his plan was to be here today, and I assume he's somewhere on the scene trying to straighten things out and get a start for this race. Like Paris, the more Indy changes, the more it stays the same, and the most unchanging thing is its unpredictability. Let's go down to Larry Newber.
Jim, we're standing by with the man who was leading the parade around. Rick, at what point did you realize something had gone wrong?
Well, really not until we, came about midway through turn 4 and we saw the pace car was still on the track with the lights flashing. Up until that point, until we could actually see the pace car, we didn't know there was anything wrong.
Now, you were obviously too far ahead of where Tom had his problems to see anything go out of line, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we couldn't tell anything. I didn't know what had happened until after, we'd come across the start finish line and slowed back down and went around through turn 2 and actually saw him sitting there.
Now, Rick, what about this delay? I must tell you, it is a bizarre scene. I've never seen the crowd here so riled up or so noisy before an event, and it's not like an automobile race. It's like a football contest. Is this affecting you in any way?
No, I think they're just anticipating a good race today, so we'll get it underway and get a little bit of breeze going through here and cool it down a little bit. It'll be good.
Well, this man here is certainly cool and collected guys up in the booth, and he's ready to go.
Please, on the main stretch, to all of you fans, presenting Tony Holman George with these words.
Gentlemen, restart your engine.
So that is the grandson of the late Tony Holman getting his first opportunity to give that command, only this time it was restart. Incidentally, Tom Sneva crashed at almost the exact point where he had a terrible crash a few years ago. We've got him now. Let's go down there.
Hey, very quickly, Tom, are you okay?
I'm fine. Just a little cut in my leg. Other than that, we're fine.
Next question that everybody in America wants to know, what happened?
No idea. We're just accelerating down the back straightaway and the car turned dead left, and, there was nothing I could do. I just turned left and went in the wall.
Now, we saw a smoke bomb on that parade lap that many people were concerned. Sam Posey alluded to that it might be of concern to the drivers. Does that have anything to do with the wreck?
No, I didn't even see the smoke bomb. Somebody else said something about it, but I'm not sure what happened. The car was just driving down the back straightaway and turned left.
Well, that's the story here. Tom Sneva's got his civvies back on, and he's going to watch the rest of this race from the infield.
And there we go, as you see the 33 cars once again moving off on the front straight to begin what I am told is going to be one parade lap and then one pace lap. The refueling process is finished, and if there's one thing that is somewhat disquieting about that conversation with Tom Sneva, it is how frequently we hear drivers here saying that something went wrong with the car, and I'm not sure what it was. Once again, the 11 rows, 3 cars apiece. Row 1, Rick Mears, Danny Sullivan, Michael Andretti. Row 2, Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Sr., and Kevin Kogan. Row 3, no longer Tom Sneva, an empty space there. Roberto Guerrero and Al Unser Jr. Row 4, Ed Pym, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Johnny Rutherford. Row 5, Randy Lanier, Pancho Carter, and Jacques Villeneuve. Row 6, Danny Angayas, Jose Le Garza, and Tony Bettenhausen. Row 7, Ari Lyondike, Jeff Brabham, and A.J. Foyt. Row 8, Raul Boisel, Scott Brayton, and Phil Kruger. Row 9, Chip Ganassi, Jim Crawford, and Rich Kogler. Row 10, Johnny Parsons, Gary Bettenhausen, and Mario Andretti. And row 11, George Snyder, Roberto Moreno, and Dick Simon. Now, because of the empty space on the inside of row 3, there will be an opportunity as soon as the green flag comes down for Ed Pym, or perhaps next to him, Emerson Fittipaldi, in the middle of row 4 to move up a little bit more rapidly than might previously have been the case.
Well, let me tell you, at this point, when you're committed to being in this race, and you're as charged up as these 32 drivers are right now, you feel no sympathy for a man out of the race. In fact, you feel, honestly, delight. Here's Mario, one less guy to pass. And believe me, Tom Sneva was going to be very tough in this race. I did not mention him among the pre-race favorites because he has had some mechanical problems this year, but yet he came into this race actually leading the championship, which runs through the season. So he was going to be a prime contender. He hasn't been lucky recently. He didn't win any races in '85, but you got to remember, he is the guy that has led 8 Indy 500, winning once, finishing second 3 times, and among active drivers, only Foyt has led more laps here. So to have this man, Sneva, out of the race is very good news to everyone else here.
It it bears mentioning parenthetically that Sneva is a man who always has enormous motivation when as much publicity is being showered on the Roger Penske operation, as has been the case here for the past month, because Sneva once drove for Penske, nearly won the Indianapolis 500 with him, and yet was fired. One more lap, Dwayne Sweeney waves at the drivers as they go by, and I have to assume that that means a pace lap and then the start of the race. Hoping that someone can find out for me whether that means one more parade lap.
Yes, that is the suggestion. That's what the orders were given to the drivers about 6 minutes ago now, and they said the next lap would be the pace lap. So we'll start to see them picking up speed. Dick Simon already in the pits. Of course, it was Dick Simon who got into the race only because of the elimination.
These parade and pace laps are brutal, aren't they, Sam?
I mean, I think everybody would just like to get into the race.
All right, Simon is coming back out of the pits. You can see that they're speeding up. They're approaching that speed of 120 miles an hour, which characterizes a pace lap, and I have to believe we're going to get a green flag the next time around, if indeed starter Dwayne Sweeney believes that the 32 cars are in the proper order. There they go down the backstretch. You can identify the backstretch because of the trees on the outside of the track. Of course, the front straight is all grandstand. Again, we visit our race cams. The view from the camera inside Danny Sullivan's race car in the middle of row 1. That is how the backstretch looks. You get a look at turn 3 there. There are 4 turns on the course, which is not really an oval, but a rounded rectangle, and each of the 4 turns has a slightly different visual perspective. The drivers say that you can treat each one of them differently as you approach it. Now, out of turn 3 and into the short chute at the north end of the speedway, the chutes are 1/8 of a mile long. The turns amount to 1/4 of a mile. The front straightaway and the back straightaway, 5/8 of a mile apiece. And here they come. Most sports events begin. The Indianapolis 500 explodes with the force of collective 25,000 horsepower going into turn 1. Last year, Bobby Rahal jumps into the lead from the outside of row 1, and there goes Michael Andretti making the same move. So as many believe here, Michael Andretti has taken the lead on lap 1. Rick Mears falls into place behind them. The rest of them begin to string out. Michael Andretti with the lead going down the backstretch. He's been here twice before. He has never before led a lap in the Indianapolis 500, and he appears determined to do it right now. They go into turn 3 and through the short chute on the north end of the track. Andretti still in the lead. Mears behind him in second place. Danny Sullivan has fallen back into a comfortable third place. And now here they come to complete the first lap.
All right. Curiously, the bad start, I mean, very strung out, has been nothing but good for Michael's father, Mario, who has an open field ahead of him now. That first lap, incidentally, unofficially was run at 44.6 seconds, a new record, breaking the old one, so by almost 2 seconds. So we are looking for an extremely fast pace, Jim.
That is Kevin Kogan, who's in the third place at the moment. Danny Sullivan we have listed fourth, but Emerson Fittipaldi's car has moved up there very quickly, and I believe that it is in among those leaders. Danny Sullivan behind Kogan, and you saw the other names there. Now let's watch them as they go by. That is Michael Andretti coming back onto the front straight again. That is Rick Mears behind him. Kevin Kogan swinging into view. The car behind them has a lot of white on it. Danny Sullivan. That is Sullivan indeed, who is in fourth place at the moment behind Kogan. And there goes Bobby Rahal, and there goes Al Unser Jr., and there goes Al Unser Sr., just behind his son as Michael Andretti continues to lead.
All right, at this point, the track is what they call green because of the rain over the last few days, which we know all too much about. The rubber that gets laid down in what is called the groove, which is where a majority of the drivers drive. It's that dark area of the surface that you can see. The rubber was almost all washed away. So I think that the extremely good grip that we're seeing the track offer is an explanation for this high speed that's being set right at this point. That and the fact that young Michael Andretti, let me tell you, is one hot racing driver in a very small footnote. A man named Michael has never won this Indy 500. Who knows what might be ahead?
Well, Michael Andretti has been, as our pit reporters portrayed to you, one of the loosest and most relaxed of all the competitors here ever since we arrived here back on the 5th of May for the first day of practice. He holds the lead right now ahead of Rick Mears as they turn into the chute in between turns 1 and 2. There comes Andretti out of turn 2 and again onto the back straight. Now the next time they go around, A.J. Foyt, or that's the front straight, not the back straight. A.J. Foyt, when he completes his 4th lap, will be completing a record 10,000 miles on the speedway here in Indianapolis.
You know, an incredible thing about A.J. Foyt, there are 7 men, Jim, in this race whose fathers have raced in the Indianapolis 500, and there is A.J. Foyt, and that man, A.J. Foyt, has raced against each of their fathers. He is a legend of great enduring strength.
Lap 4 of 200. Michael Andretti in the lead, and there is the slowest car in the field. Number 8, Jeff Brabham, already into the pit. Has to be a mechanical problem. There is no planned pit stop until about the 28th lap.
Well, except they're not doing anything that would suggest reacting to a mechanical problem. Something at the back. I mean, that looks like the most routine pit stop you can imagine. Could a tire have been going flat, possibly, Jim? Because I don't think they didn't try to work on the engine or the suspension or anything.
Quite obviously, he didn't like the handling of the car and wanted new tires as a result of it. And now Brabham has them and is back out on the track. Rick Mears in second place, biding his time for now. Mears has said that he segments the race in 2 250-mile portions. The object for the first 250 miles, just to keep going and to stay on the speedway. For the second 250 miles, you begin to focus in on the task of getting to the front. Right now, it is Michael Andretti in front, Rick Mears in second place, and the two of them have put a fair amount of distance between themselves and Kevin Cogan as they once again come down the front straightaway.
Well, this is a settling in period, of course. You're checking to make sure the radio works, the handling feels okay. You're trying to get used to racing at high speed. Oh, boy. Kevin Cogan, there's no question why he's going as fast as he is. He's driving the race of his life, staying very close to the outside of that groove, Jim, which is a fast way around the track, but extremely perilous. So I started to talk about settling in. He's racing right now, Kevin Cogan.
Now, as we mentioned, we have a camera isolated near the rear of the pack on Mario Andretti, who started in row 10 and whose object it was to pass as many cars as early in the race as he possibly could. That is Andretti in the red car directly in the middle of that camera shot. And here he comes through the pack, Sam.
All right, well, let's see. That broken up start, there was quite a big gap between the leading 2 or 3 rows and the rest of the pack can only have helped Mario. He did get a clean start. There was plenty of running room, none of the dangerous stuff that we feared might happen. Look at him aggressively.
You said extreme risk. There he is down over the apron in the early laps of the race. Mario Andretti is going out hell-bent to try to get to the front.
True enough, but I think he's got just the spacing that he needs between the cars he's got to pick off. What he's got to worry about is a battle. You see him going through turn 3, and now we'll pick him up coming through 4. There he is down low, the second car, the red car there. But he is so far able, he hasn't really been balked at any time so far. He's getting just the kind of race that he really wants. He's coming up on Raul Boesel there. He rips right by him. Mario has got to be ignited by the luck and the opportunities that are being presented to him right now. This is great.
And there is Mario's 23-year-old son, the youngest man in the race, already lapping some of the slower cars. Michael Andretti, number 18, leads the Indianapolis 500.
You know, just as we talked about Foyt's milestone, and we see the standings there, Mario just had one himself at the finish of the 8th lap there. He had logged 5,000 racing miles here. So he's doing pretty well, and he has moved up as far as about the 21st position. That's unofficial, but you can see how well Mario is doing.
Interesting, as we look at those standings, you see Carter through Tony Bettenhausen, 13 through 18. Danny Sullivan has already dropped down as far as 6th place. What do you make of that, if anything, Sam Posey? Well, we'll touch on that point when we come back. Let's go first to Larry Newman.
Jim, something is definitely wrong, but the problem is the crew cannot determine exactly. The reason is that Danny Sullivan's radio is not working properly. Danny Sullivan cannot communicate with the crew. They jumped over the wall a couple of laps ago looking like they were ready to make a pit stop. They made the assumption, well, it must be tire stagger. But Danny went by that time, didn't slow down, gave no indication that he was coming in. They're frantically trying to get the radios to work so they can communicate with their driver, the man who won this race in very dramatic fashion a year ago.
All right, so there's the answer to my question. There is indeed a problem with Sullivan's car, and we await a determination of what it might be. Meanwhile, you look at the leader as he proceeds down the back straight, Michael Andretti, and now this is Danny Sullivan with the view from our race cam.
All right, let's try to see if it's a handling problem. Typically, if it was, Jim, you'd see his right hand, his gloved hand there, pushed way over on the wheel, much more than it is. That would suggest severe understeer, they call it, where the front wheels don't really bite through the turn properly. But no, it isn't that. The car seems to be handling fine. I mean, I don't see any of the telltale signs of a very bad handling car. Danny seems to be driving smoothly. Obviously, he's not just cooling it. It's very bad that he's this far back. It recalls, in fact, last year when he did not have the car handling well at first at all and had to come on. He was almost lapped by Andretti, as you probably remember, about a quarter of the way into the race. But this is worse because in this race, the leaders are going so extraordinarily fast. And by the way, on the 10th lap, Michael Andretti won that bonus 25,000, and he did set a new 10-lap record, so the pace is incredible at this point.
And interestingly, Sam, while you were talking about him, he traveled more than 3 miles. Now here he goes down the back straightaway, 5/8 of a mile. The open space on the right defines it as the back straightaway for the driver. Here's the visual perspective of turn 3 with a grandstand on the right and still some open space behind turn 3. Now you begin to come into what you might think of as a tunnel. Out of this chute into turn 4, and now you're going to be surrounded by literally hundreds of thousands of spectators as you go down the front street. You can see that it's a little bit darker as you travel down the front straight, and particularly it gets darker when you make this turn upcoming. Turn 1.
215 miles an hour, by the way. That's what that looks like. There's Michael Andretti, the leader since the beginning of the race. He's coming up already to lap Arie Luyendyk, the black car right in front of him. That is how fast the pace is, Jim.
Michael Andretti leads the Indianapolis 500. His father, somewhere behind, stalking him through the pack.
Mario.
And now Mario has slowed down. We just saw Mario Andretti slow down on the front straight in front of us.
He's slowing into turn 1, Jim. He put his hand up right in front here.
Standings. Yes, if we look at those standings, Mario Andretti has pulled down below the apron between turns 1 and 2. And there's a look at Mario Andretti, who clearly has some problem.
Well, we have no idea what it was, but he signaled with his hand raised, so he knew it's terminal, whatever it is. The engine's probably gone, or the gearbox. Who knows? But Mario's long run of bad luck. We think we've overheard him say on his radio back to his pit communication that his radio, that his engine has quit. My first guess. You know, incredible when you think he last won this race in 1969, and in the years before that, he was twice on the pole. He was Rookie of the Year back in '65. He must have thought, here's the yellow flag, he must have thought that this track was going to be his own private hunting ground, and it just has not worked out that way.
It has become one of the most star-crossed relationships in all of sport. Mario Andretti and his continuing haunting string of failures at the Indianapolis 500. All right, lap 14, the yellow flag out. Most of the leaders, in fact, all of them will probably pit now, and we'll be back with our live coverage of the Indianapolis 500 right after this.
Matchlight Charcoal is proud to present the $25,000 Fast Start Award to Michael Andretti for being the leader after 10 laps.
Andretti's car, which quite obviously can no longer power itself, it is being towed back to pit row, and from there it will go to the garage, and it will be another year before Mario Andretti will have another chance to tackle the Indianapolis 500. Meanwhile, he will root for his son, Michael Andretti, who won the last previous race in championship automobile racing at Long Beach and now leads this one. The standings have been temporarily jumbled by the series of pit stops which have taken place just in front of us. Jose Legarza second place for the moment, but that has more to do with who is in the pits than with who is on the track. Ray Hall, Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan, Guerrero and Fittipaldi, along with Vogler, all back there in the 7 to 12 range, and they'll be moving back up very shortly. Unser Sr., Pancho Carter, Johnny Rutherford, A.J. Foyt. Two big names are out of the race, but most of the big ones are still in. Michael Andretti leads. He almost didn't make it this far. A year ago, Michael Andretti survived a serious helicopter crash, which could have ended his career.
Well, I think the helicopter story was about the worst experience I've ever had in my life. we were leaving our place in the Pocono Mountains. It was about 2 hours before the start of the Pocono 500, and we had 2 helicopters. My father and Paul Newman were in the one helicopter, and me, my wife, Sandy, and Kevin Cogan and his girlfriend, and 2 other people and Don Henderson, our manager, were in that helicopter, and we both sort of took off together, and our pilot, for some reason, decided to take off in the other direction, the opposite direction that he actually landed in. And right when he did, I think it was me and Kevin looked at each other. We saw the high wires. There was high wires, and we both hollered at the same time, but it was too late, and we flew right into the wires. And the helicopter did about 2 turns, and I think what saved our lives, and we can thank God for this, is there was an apple tree, and that sort of cushioned our fall. We hit it, stopped us from spinning, and we landed on the ground. How the thing didn't catch fire, how none of the rotors hit us. They took off. The main rotor just took off and hit a tree about 100 yards away. It's just all the circumstances, the way they really worked in our favor. I mean, any one thing could have made it a real tragedy, and it was just amazing.
It is no surprise, of course, to see that Michael speaks of mortal danger with pretty much the same offhand attitude that has always characterized his father's approach to the subject. He's in no danger right now as he continues to travel at the front of the pack under the yellow, and we go down to Larry Newberg.
Well, Jim, the story is a sad one, but it's very short. Mario coasted in with no power. It was very quiet down here. All the crews were kind of scratching their heads, trying to figure out what could be wrong. Mario had radioed in that the car simply quit. There was no blown engine involved. They are guessing electrics. But when he coasted in here with no noise coming from underneath the bonnet at all, there were a lot of long and sad faces. They don't really know yet, but they're optimistic they can get this fixed. Back to the Danny Sullivan situation, we told you a few moments earlier that Danny was having trouble with the radios. We understand that this yellow flag gives them an opportunity to make some changes, and hopefully they have their radio communication problem solved as Bob Sproul and crew continues to work here at Mario Andretti.
It's a continuing process of adjustments throughout the race. We are told that a green flag will come out next time, but Sam Posey, the early pit stop for all the leaders, will have a domino effect on strategy for the rest of the race.
Yeah, it certainly will, because although there is enough fuel for most of these teams to run, the rules limit the amount of fuel that you can have. You can have the 40 gallons in the car plus 280 gallons in the tank behind the pit wall when the race starts. But it is severely limited. All right, now, most of the teams feel they can go the distance without actually running out of fuel. So why is fuel such a big deal? Because obviously, if you're coming near the end of the race and there's a yellow flag, let's say with 35 or 36 laps to go, here we go, restarting with Michael Andretti back, still in the lead. Obviously, the man that gets the most mileage has a tactical advantage, let's put it that way.
It appeared during the yellow that Michael Andretti's car may have been leaking some fluid onto the track, so we'll watch carefully to see if he may be facing some imminent problem. Al Unser Sr. had to pit twice because the right rear wheel on his car was not thoroughly bolted on the first time, and he came back in to get that corrected. There is Jose Legarza, who was once the youngest driver ever to compete in the Indianapolis 500 and is now in second place. At 24 years old, Garza is making his 6th start in the big race. Just behind him, Jacques Villeneuve of Canada. His brother Gilles was a famous and very great name in Formula One car racing, is in 3rd place. And behind him, Rick Mears lingers in 4th place.
You know, as Michael Andretti told that remarkable story about the helicopter, it just reminds me of how dangerous life on the racetrack really can be, on and off the track. Here's Mario. They're, of course, trying to do something, but it doesn't look likely, and he's lost so many laps now that there's no hope, obviously, for his being a factor in the race. But these men, Jim, basically, they live dangerously. They travel by helicopter from place to place. They have sports like hang gliding. Carlos Pache, a great Formula One driver, was killed a few years ago that way. Graham Hill was shooting an approach in his airplane in fog and crashed and was killed along with Tony Bryce. So these men, as I said, they do live dangerously, both on the track and off.
Well, Michael Andretti is looking good so far as he has taken out with the same vengeance under the green that he demonstrated in leading for the first 15 laps of the race. So it is still Andretti on top. Jose Garza temporarily holding on to second place, so I believe Rick Mears may be setting up to pass him right at this moment. Mears has already moved past Villeneuve and back into third place. And there, they are moving Andretti's car. By my calculation, he is now 6 laps down, but he's going to go back out onto the racetrack, and that occasions a tremendous response from the crowd here.
All right, well, that suggests that it was something probably electrical. It wasn't a major malfunction in that with the engine, and that's why we didn't see a big puff of smoke, Jim. Now, let's see. Larry Newber, are you down there with anything more?
Sam, I certainly am, and I think it was electrics. I think I saw the spark box being changed.
Yeah, we changed the spark box and battery, and it fired right up again.
Now, for the people back home, basically that's the electronic brains which makes this car tick, isn't it?
Yes, the ignition system.
Any idea how many laps you lost?
No, not yet.
Well, it was an agonizing few moments. A spark box, simple enough to replace, but it was mighty costly in terms of distance on the racetrack.
As you watch the battle for second and third place between Garza and Rick Mears, Sam, a spark box.
Oh, you know, and now the most depressing kind of day ahead for Mario Andretti, right? 6 laps down, no chance to win, and yet obliged to get out there and run almost 500 whole miles without a chance to do anything. Take all those risks. Here comes Mears moving into second, right past Garza. Not surprising. Garza was one of the slowest qualifiers, and that reshuffling due to the pit stop what brought Garza, like cream, to the top momentarily.
All right, let's clarify the issue of speed. Rick Mears qualified at a 4-lap average of nearly 217 miles per hour. It's worth pointing out that no one, Rick Mears included, expects to travel 217 miles per hour during the race.
2 reasons primarily. First, you detune the engine a little bit. In fact, you gear it a little differently so you're not turning quite as many revs. It's one thing to have an engine last for the 4 laps of qualifying, quite another to have it last for the 500 miles of the race. I think anyone can understand that. A more subtle effect is what they do. There's one of the pit signs. What they do to the suspension. That's a signal, by the way, that Michael Andretti is just over 3 seconds ahead, which is an enormous advantage to have. He's averaging over 200 miles an hour despite the yellow. Just going to complete the idea, Jim, that there's also a detuning of the handling of the car to make it more comfortable, easier to drive in traffic. They put more wing angle, which creates aerodynamic drag on the straight, but makes the car easier to drive through the turn. So the whole car is just a little bit more comfortable and more easy to drive.
There is Mears, who just moved past Mario Andretti to clear the traffic between himself and the only car leading him in the race, Michael Andretti. We're now told that the leak we saw coming from Michael Andretti's car was a fuel overflow, which is not a problem and something that is only temporary. So there is Mears now as he chases Michael Andretti through the short chute at the south end of the track, and now here again is Mario Andretti in the pit.
Yeah, all right. Well, of course, all the teeth have really been taken out of the disappointment. I mean, they're making a fine adjustment, I believe, to the front wing there. I mean, Mario, at this point, if he's going to have to go almost 450 miles, he wants that car to be comfortable. I think he'd set it up. This plays directly into what we were just talking about. He'd set it up very loose, as they call it, for an ambitious drive. I think he's made the car a little steadier now, knowing his chances are so diminished.
The 2 cars at the front of the pack, Michael Andretti and Rick Mears, reflect the combination now dominant in Indianapolis car racing. Both are March chassis made in England, both powered by Cosworth DFX 8-cylinder engines, likewise made in England. If you want to win at Indianapolis, your best bet is to be in a March with a Cosworth engine. And there is Rick Mears' fiancée, so instrumental in the long process of nursing him back to health after his serious injuries suffered at Montreal in 1984. Chris Bowen, he's the one who's also holding the gold watch right now.
Fiancé, that could be a scoop. She tells me that's not true.
Oh,
there are
right.
marches in this race, March cars and Lola cars, and there is one quick and easy way to tell the difference. See, just in front of the rear tires of Rick Mears' car here, those little yellow winglets, they're called. That identifies the March car. The Lola car does not have that. Almost all the cars in the race are Marches, 24 of them. Only 8 are Lolas, and of course there's the single Penske. But almost all of the cars this year are the March cars, as they were last year. Very successful car building company in England. that frankly only makes me regret the absence of an American car in this race. It would have been the 20th anniversary for Dan Gurney's Eagle team, the all-American car building company, and I greatly regret not seeing them here.
There's a constant process that goes on here now. It has already begun. The crew chief, the people in the crew, the drivers themselves feeling the car, chasing the car, as Al Unser calls it, to try to find the best combination. Rick Mears spoke to us about that process and his input into it.
You know, I can tell them the car's pushing, I can tell them the car's loose, and I can let them make the change, and they'll make it. But, you know, if it's not quite enough, then they'd make it a little more on the next stop. And if it's a little too much, then we'd go back and split the difference on the next stop, and then we'd be in the ballpark. But that takes 3 stops to do it. If I can say I need 300ths, or I need 500ths, or I need a half a turn of wing, or I need a full turn of wing, if I can determine that, how much, and if we can hit it on the head the first stop, we just eliminated 2 stops to make changes. We're quicker for those next 2 stops. And that's the part I've got to figure out, and that's what I like to keep tabs on. And I like doing that. I like dialing the car during the race. And also I've got to, decide whether, well, would it be better to run the car a little loose now because it's pushing in traffic? Or shall we live with it like it is? Because or the traffic's going to be less now. There's less cars running. And I'll be running more in clean air this leg than I was last leg, so I don't want to run it quite that loose because of running in clean air. That's all the kind of stuff I like to try to pinpoint, and then they don't have to worry about that. That's my job.
And indeed, all the drivers try to do it, but that sense of how to adjust the car as you go along is an acknowledged part of Rick Mears' genius as a race car driver. There again, a look at how it feels from the perspective of one Ed Pym. And that's how it feels today for Mario Andretti, who is once again out of his car, perhaps for the last time. We'll return with more racing from the Indianapolis 500 after these messages and a word from our local station. Once again, you look at the leaderboard. Live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you see the lap count. Barring a yellow flag, it will be about 12 more laps to the next series of pit stops. Michael Andretti continues to hold the lead over Rick Mears, and behind them you saw the rest of the group in the first 6, 7 through 12 there. Johnny Rutherford, his teammate Rich Vogler, bracketing that group. Now at the front of the pack, Michael Andretti and Rick Mears are lapping some of the cars which are listed here as we get toward the rear of the pack. You see that most of these, in fact all of them there, already 1 lap down. We are trying to track the margin between Michael Andretti, who is right there in the blue and yellow car, and there is Rick Mears, who has pulled right up into Michael Andretti's rear view mirror.
He's only 1.7 seconds back as of the last lap as they cross the start-finish line. I estimate he's a little less than that now. At this point, Rick Mears is the fastest car on the track. He is catching Michael Andretti. Both cars, both the Andretti car and the Mears car, seem to be handling exceptionally well. They're able to move through traffic very easily, but the gap, which has fluctuated considerably, it was up to over 5 seconds just 3 laps ago, has been greatly affected by their passing other cars. But on the open track, when they're running flat out with no interruptions, Mears is catching Michael Andretti at this point.
And right now, it's worth pointing out that for this stage of the race, there is an extraordinarily high number of cars still in the race. 31 of them, 32 were the ones who started the race. I think 2 are gone from that group now, so there may be only 30 cars still on the track. But nevertheless, 30 cars means a lot of traffic when you're almost 100 miles into the race.
It does indeed. You can see I'm just fascinated by this battle here because I don't believe that Michael Andretti is cooling it, just setting a comfortable pace and doesn't care whether Rick Mears passes him or not. I think he cares a good deal. He's experiencing what it's like to lead the Indy 500. That can be intoxicating, especially for a young man, and he may not want to give this lead up without a real fight. Mears, however, we talked about his ability to adjust a car to the track condition. Remember that when we started this race, the track was, as I described it, green. It had been rained on heavily. Now there's a groove building up. The cars are laying rubber down, because of the friction as they go through the turn. So the track is already very different, and I suspect that Rick Mears is making changes at the beginning of to the handling of this car. We saw, at the beginning of the show, that cockpit piece. You see, he's got those levers. The shock absorbers can be adjusted. He can be doing a lot, and Rick Mears is very good at all that.
Well, given a free ride around the race course without interfering traffic in front of him, how might Rick Mears' line through the turns differ from those of some of the lesser skilled drivers?
It would be what you would call a higher line. He'd run closer to the wall, especially on the exits. Now, we have Larry Newber down in the pits, and he has word for Mario Andretti, and I hope he extends our condolences. It's really a shame to see Mario out of this thing.
Sam, we certainly will. And Mario, Sam Posey has just, along with the rest of us at ABC, extended our condolences for what happened today. I imagine it's gotten tiresome over the years talking to people like me after dropping out of this race. This place has not been kind to you.
Well, certainly not today again. So, we had an electrical problem early, and that's
You started way in the back. Was the car performing to your liking? You seem to be moving up.
well, it wasn't. It wasn't, and I wasn't really progressing the way I would have hoped to. But you know, if we didn't have the problem, I probably could have made some corrections along the way, and you know, may do. But what can I say?
The electrical problem was the only problem with the machine, though, right?
That's the only problem. Yeah, that's what killed the engine.
Well, Mario Andretti's odyssey at Indianapolis has been well over 20 years strong. There's been one brief moment of victory, but not today.
Indeed, Mario Andretti works with co-owners Carl Haas and Paul Newman. Haas is the American distributor for the Lola chassis, which Andretti rides in. His sponsorship comes from a huge food conglomerate, which provides him with probably more money than most others in the sport. He has a lot of advantages, just no luck at Indianapolis.
Yeah, but you know, what is so tough for Mario Andretti is now going to be the rest of this race where he has to watch his son Michael perform. All of the fathers in racing, Al Unser Sr., Mario, have all said that the hardest thing of all is to watch their sons in competition. It's going to be a bittersweet afternoon for Mario Andretti watching Michael, especially if he continues to lead this thing.
Well, there is Michael in the lead, and the car 2 cars in front of Michael. He is apparently setting up to try to pass very shortly. The red one belongs to Danny Sullivan, last year's champion. Now, we are told that Sullivan is still having trouble with radio communication with the pit. There he is, right in front of Michael Andretti. Now we're told that the radio communication has indeed cleared up, but whatever the reason, Sullivan is in a spot where you might not have expected him to be, right here on lap number 41.
All right, now, Michael Andretti catching Danny will give us a benchmark. Now, of course, we're going to see Michael come by on the left. In fact, he saw Danny look over at him briefly. There's Michael Andretti, the race leader, right ahead of Danny Sullivan, who, of course, won this race last year. Now, in a moment, Danny will be blocking his teammate, Rick Mears, who's right behind him now. He's not obviously going to block him. He'll give him plenty of running room. But in seeing that pass, it's just obvious that Michael overwhelmed Danny. Michael now behind Lyondike, who's about to put a second lap on, I believe. Rick Mears, the third, the yellow car there in that group. He'll be by Sullivan in just a moment as well. Sullivan defenseless at this point.
Well, I think all of the cars in the field may at this moment feel defenseless in the face of the terrific dicing at the front of the pack between Michael Andretti and Rick Mears.
This live ABC sports presentation of the 70th Indianapolis 500 is being brought to you by Chevrolet, who invite you to drive today Chevy, live today Chevy. By Miller Beer. Miller made the American way since 1855. By Goodyear, you either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. And by Safeguard, the combination of unbeatable deodorant soap protection and a rich, thick lather.
Boyd is the grand champion of the Indianapolis 500. He understands the meaning of team effort. In 1961, his time on the track was slower than his competitors, but his pit stops were faster. The result was a 500 victory. Now, Foyt is the only 4-time winner at Indy and the only man to win in both front and rear engine cars. We salute his winning efforts.
This summer, the Hilton family invites you and your family to some of the most beautiful places in the world. Join us for the Great American Vacation.
The Great American Vacation. It's more than castles and capitals. It's also Hilton's specially priced vacation rates that make a summer of fun more affordable.
America. She's never looked so beautiful.
Reserve now. Call America's Vacation Hotline, 1-800-HILTONS.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame Museum brings you all the excitement and tradition of the greatest spectacle in racing. See winning race cars, race memorabilia, classic passenger cars, and tour auto racing's famous 2.5-mile oval, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Visit the Hall of Fame Museum, open